on this side.
It's, I don't know if it's the pixels or what. I
Yeah.
don't know.
All right.
Okay.
Today we are going to be doing, we're working in um, my workbook called Jesus Starts His Third Year in Ministry, which of course is his third year, year 29 AD. And we are now going to be working on chapter 6, evil thoughts that come from the heart. We've already done all the feeding of the 5,000 and walking on water and him being on the other side of in Capernaum. So now we're going to talk more about what he is telling the audience after they're pressing him to become, to give them the manna all the time. So, and this will be on Mark 7, verses 1 through 23.
The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and they observe many other traditions, such as washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles.
Right. Good Jews were expected to do a ceremonial hand washing before, during, and after each meal. Their hands were also expected to be washed only a certain way in order to be properly washed. Any variation of this, and the hands were still unclean. This was a man made law, a tradition, and not written in the Bible for ordinary eating. There was ceremonial washing for priests stated in the Bible before they entered the temple. The Jews had extended it to what every good Jew had to do before eating. Where did the Pharisees and scribes come from?
Jerusalem.
From time to time, an official delegation of religious leaders would come to check out what Jesus was teaching. This has happened once already in Mark 3:22. What did they see that bothered them?
Some disciples eating food with their hands and unwashed.
Right. Is it normal hand washing or ceremonial hand washing that wasn't done?
Oh, I just put yes.
It was
Is it?
ceremonial hand washing
Yeah,
that
it's
wasn't done.
ceremonial. Yeah, I
Right.
didn't read
You
that
know,
right.
if you think about Jesus and his disciples, they are doing walking. They're walking all over the place in these things. They don't have the ability to have someone hold a pitcher over their hands while they wash their hands 3 times and all this stuff, and they're not exactly eating all the time. So when they have food, they're going to eat. um,
Yeah.
is this ceremonial hand washing required by the Bible in order to eat food?
No.
No. In the Bible, who was the only people that were required to wash their hands in a very exact way?
Priest.
Right, the priest. Now, I don't say that it shouldn't be done. Actually, the hand washing, I didn't know if you knew this little trivia, but you know how surgeons wash their hands very thoroughly before that came from this. Someone, when there was lots of infections that were happening during surgery, someone read this and say, hey, maybe we should do this. And that's what changed and reduced a lot of the infections in surgery.
Yeah,
So it kind of comes from the Bible itself.
right. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled hands? He replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites, as it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. You have to let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions.
So Jesus is quoting from Isaiah 29:13. And I think this is a passage where he's going to show them why the examples of why man-made law overrules God's law. I'm pretty sure we're going to head there here. But yes, there were times when their man-made law superseded God's law. We have already seen that when Jesus was healing on the Sabbath and they were upset that work was being done on the Sabbath. And he said, would you not take care of an animal? Would you not take care of something that was injured on the Sabbath? You know, And so, yeah, so man-made law sometimes supersedes God's law, and that's what Jesus is so upset about. Go ahead and answer number one.
Okay. The Pharisees and the scribes asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders?"
What
And what
prophet did Jesus quote from?
Isaiah.
Right. Go ahead and do number three.
Okay. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. These
These leaders,
leaders, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
These leaders were more concerned with trivial matters or traditions than God's commands. Jesus sums up his argument in verse 8. In your own words, what does he mean?
You are not doing God's command and doing it your way.
Right, right, right. You were more interested in the traditions of the elders than even if they contradicted what God's law was. Does churches today have some traditions that seem to be elevated into God ordained requirements? Some ideas are below.
Yeah, like with my church, they have a couple of services. One is just the tradition, and then the afternoon one is more with a band, with the music, because the older generation, they don't like all that loud music and the bands and the guitar and stuff like that. So, and then as far as dressed up, it used to be, in the days that everybody loved dressing up for church. But now it's like that's not a recommendation from God to have to be dressed up. You can come as you are, except for your birthday suit. But
Yeah.
it's not necessary to have that,
But
in
yes,
God's eyes.
there were definitely dress requirements. It used to be in some churches. In the South, that still exists, that there are dress requirements. And type of music, you're absolutely correct. There are many churches that have to provide two different types of services because the older people just don't feel like they're worshiping God right if they have contemporary music. That's, and the holiness of the sanctuary is just a building. And yet, some people will say you have to take your hat off before you come in because this is God's house. Well, it is God's house, but it's not the holiest of holies, type thing.
Yeah.
So yes, many churches develop traditions that they feel almost become law, and
Right.
that's the issue there.
Yes. Yeah.
We need to watch out for that here as well as there.
Yeah. And he continued, "You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and mother,' and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is Corban, that is devoted to God, then you no longer let them do anything for their father or mother. Thus, you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and you do many things like that."
Yes, exactly. So, okay, so if you're supposed to honor your father and mother, and so we know that means you need to make sure they have a place to stay and food and these things. They need to be properly taken care of. But what these Pharisees and higher Jews were saying, okay, I'm going to dedicate all my extra money to God. And that's more important. So I'm sorry, mom and dad, but God is more important, and I've already dedicated this. And Jesus is saying this is not according to God's law. You need to take care of your mother and father first. And but that was the rules that they were making.
Yeah.
Here, Jesus gives an example of when Jewish tradition overruled a commandment of God. Honor your father and mother is the fifth of the 10 commandments, Exodus 20:12. Anyone who curses their father and mother is to be put to death is from Exodus 21:17. There was a Jewish tradition that stated if a man said that his possessions or savings were Corban, dedicated to God, then these possessions were unavailable to help his parents. What are the two laws of God shown in Exodus that are spoken of here?
Exodus 20:12, honor your parents. Exodus 21:17, anyone who curses his parents be put to death.
How were the Jewish men getting out of helping their parents?
If a son has possession or savings, it's dedicated to God.
Right. If he said that, yes. And
Yeah.
then that not take care of his parents. Go ahead and complete number 3.
What did I put? I can't
It's
even
verse
read my
13.
writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even read my writing. What did I put? I can't read it. You blank the word of God by your tradition. Your
Verse 13.
horror.
You nullify.
Oh, wait. 13. Oh, you nullify. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
didn't,
no
I
problem.
couldn't read what I wrote. You nullify the word of God by your tradition.
Was this the only
Right.
time Jewish tradition overrode the commandments of God?
No,
No, that's true.
yeah, nullify. The way I wrote it looked like hillbilly.
Mhm.
And I go, what? Okay.
Yeah.
Again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them.
Right. So basically, he has disrupted all the food laws. Remember, Jews have laws on certain foods, and he's just basically destroyed all those in this one sentence. Basically, anything outside of a person can't defile them by going inside. You eat in these things. You can't be defiled by eating a pig. However, your heart and your mind can defile you by your thoughts and your emotions. Not really your heart, they all come
Yeah.
from your mind. But yeah, defile means something was made dirty or its purity was damaged. Example, a man defiled the church by painting obscene graffiti on its wall. So, number 1, based on what Jesus said, can anything you eat cause you to be defiled or unclean?
No.
By saying this, Jesus was saying something revolutionary. God had commanded that certain animals were unclean and should not be eaten, as was stated in Leviticus 11. And here Jesus says nothing a person eats will defile them. You realize the laws of the Leviticus were for the Israelites. Now we've come to a point where we are now curing the meat or refrigerating the meat, maybe not refrigerating during Jesus' time, but we are preserving the meat so that it doesn't make us sick. So
Yeah.
those laws are no longer needed as much as they were for the Israelites when they were traveling around in tents and couldn't do all that.
Yeah.
According to Jesus, what can defile a person?
What comes out of a person's mouth?
Right. Can you give examples of things that would come out of a heart of a person that would make them defiled?
Well, a good example of Ashley Babbitt. She was she served in the service, Air Force, and was really honored. And she was really a hero. And then when she was at the J6 and she got murdered, people were slandering her and saying bad things about her, which isn't true.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
defiled.
Yeah. And later, God will later confirm that all meat is now clean to eat to Peter. And he does this in Acts 10, 9 through 15. You go ahead and read that.
About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat. And while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contained all kinds of four-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean."
Right.
After he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. "Are you also without understanding?" he asked. "Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of the body." In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. He went on, What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person.
God is a lot more concerned with what comes out of our lips and what goes into our mouth. Where does evil thoughts come from?
Inside and defile a person.
Right, from the inside them, yes. Even though it says the person's heart, it's really the emotions and stuff. Match the words to their definitions.
Well, malice would be intention or desire to do evil. Lewdness is alluring through the lust of the flesh. Slander, speaking against a person with intent to hurt. So then folly has to be absurd act, which is inconsistent with the ordinary rules of prudence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that'll work. All right, we come to our crossword. Okay, so number 2 across in Mark 7:9-13. What book of the Bible are the 2 scriptures quoted here come from?
Exodus.
Exodus? Okay. And number 3, in the Bible, who were the only people required to ceremonially wash their hands?
Priests.
7, the Pharisees and the scribes were not worried about normal hand washing, but
ceremonial
hand washing. Number 8, when money is dedicated or devoted to God, it's called what?
Corban.
Right. And 10, this means something is made dirty or its purity is damaged.
Defiled.
Right. 1 down. This means the speaking against a person with the intent to hurt.
Slander.
Right. Number 3,
the Pharisees
and some of the teachers of the laws came from Jerusalem to see Jesus. Number 4, this means the intention or desire to do evil.
Malice.
5, the Pharisees and the scribes wondered why the disciples did not live according to the
traditions
of the elders. 6, you have let go of the
commands
of God and are holding on to human traditions. And 9, evil thoughts come from a person's
heart.
Yeah. So there we go for today. And so let me go ahead and close this off.